What's up, everybody? My name is Joe Brown, and this is Heresy Financial. It seems that everywhere we turn these days, we're seeing more news of more shortages and more potential shortages. Obviously, we've been dealing with the semiconductor shortages, where we're seeing supply chain issues, hard to get new computers. Even companies with locked down supply chains like Apple are having huge issues with being able to produce the exact type of electronics that they want to produce on the schedule that they would have liked to produce them. We're even seeing car companies like Toyota, who again, company that historically has their supply chains locked down, having trouble and cutting car production by up to 40%. And not only that, we're seeing shortages of food, we're seeing shortages or potential shortages in rubber and potential shortages coming up with cement and concrete. So in this video, we're going to talk about what the root of the problem really is. Ready? Let's dive in. Wealth is not a zero-sum game. If it was, that would mean that all the wealth that has ever existed can only be redistributed and shuffled around from person to person. Clearly, that's not the case because today we have more wealth than we had 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and 5,000 years ago. And if that wasn't the case, then every single one of us would still be hunters and gatherers, spending every moment, every waking hour looking for sustenance just to survive. The reality is that wealth, that growth of wealth, the best definition for it is getting more for less over time. Really, it's a definition of deflation. Deflation is true wealth growth. For a great book on this, read The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. But essentially, over time, the only way progress has been made that results in the growth of wealth over time is through technology and allowing humans to outsource our labor. When we were able to outsource some of our labor from hunting and gathering to animals and move from that into farming, there was a giant leap forward. When we were then able to outsource some of that labor to higher efficiency machines rather than animals, and the Industrial Revolution happened, again, great leap forward in wealth and progress shared by all. And if you think it wasn't a net advantage that people don't have to be working farms anymore and you could have one tractor doing the work of hundreds of people because of the devastating job loss that happened as a result of that, you're crazy. And if you look at the fact that a poor person today has access to all of the information that all of humanity has ever put together through the internet, the radio, air conditioning, heating, and food on demand from whatever cuisine around the world they like. This is true wealth that wasn't available even 150 years ago to anybody. The richest people on earth didn't have that. And the way by which this happens is that things that are scarce become abundant through technology. And this even happens to things that are fixed like real estate. This is because way back in the day, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, when all we could do all day long is hunt and gather, the only places that we could live were places that you could hunt and gather. And when we learned how to farm, that made land that was not conducive to hunting and gathering all of a sudden be extremely valuable because you could farm on it. And now you could live on that land that you couldn't before. But there was still plenty of land that was rocky that you couldn't farm on. And so that was unusable, uninhabitable until the Industrial Revolution, when all of a sudden it became very valuable to have land that you could build large buildings and large cities on. You didn't want good farmland for that. You wanted hard, rocky, good ground for that. And again, that exploded the amount of available real estate in the world through technology and innovation. And the fact of the matter is that if you scaled up New York City to be the size so that it could include the entire world's population, so you just stack a bunch of New York cities next to each other, that same population density, you could fit the entire world's population into the state of Texas. No problem. And Texas is tiny compared to the world. So the world doesn't have a space problem where we're running out of room. We're not overpopulating the world. There's just small isolated areas that have too many people, but technology and innovation and advancements in wealth and progress and growth allow us to utilize our resources better so that we get more for less. Meaning we have the same amount of space on this planet that we always have, but somehow we keep on finding ways to make new parts of it more useful so that it gains in growth and wealth for all. And if you want a fantastic book about the role that energy plays in the growth of civilization over time, read Energy and Civilization by Vaclav Smil. So it turns out that growth of wealth, innovation, technology, progress, deflation are all different ways of describing the same force of history. And now look at what we are facing in the present. A year and a half later, After the pandemic started, we're still facing shortages in grocery stores. Food suppliers are struggling to keep up with demand. Prices of food are skyrocketing as a result. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you probably don't know, but I recently spent 5 months doing the carnivore diet. If you go back and watch any of my videos from before January of this year, I weighed about 230 pounds and I looked swollen. By May of this year, I had dropped 50 pounds and I now weigh under 180 pounds, all due to the fact that I eat healthy meat. Now, one of the things that you have to do if you're going to try something like this is have easy to make meat on hand. And so one of the ways I do this, I buy big boxes of frozen burger patties. So on those days that I forget to plan in advance, I can throw a couple burger patties on the grill. Over the last 3 to 4 months, I've been buying the exact same box of burgers. It's a 10-pound box of burger patties. And at the beginning of this year, it was $25. Then it went up to $28. And right now it's $31. Don't worry, I've done the math for you. In 6 months, that's a 24% increase. And it doesn't look like things like that are slowing down. In fact, it looks like those kind of things are spreading. If you look at the rubber shortage that could be coming up, recently reported by CNBC, we could be experiencing massive shortages of rubber, primarily due to the fact that they are extremely fragile supply chains. We get 90% of our rubber from Asia. In addition to that, if you look at the housing boom and the construction that's had to take place as a result of that, we're looking at a potential shortage in cement and concrete as well, and that is before this infrastructure bill starts getting put into action. And CNBC recently reported on this, that the infrastructure bill might put too much strain on the cement and concrete industry, and it might not be able to keep pace with all the demand. Now, like I said, today, everywhere we look, we're seeing shortages and prices go up. This is in stark contrast to the overwhelming force of history where technology and innovation makes things cheaper. You get more for less, you get more abundance out of scarcity, and instead things are getting more expensive and less abundant, more scarce. And here's the root of the problem: central planning. When you have a government that steps in and directs resources, instead of allowing individual actors to freely choose where they allocate the resources on their own, you end up with a misallocation of resources and malinvestment. It is inevitable. You cannot avoid it. And everywhere you look that you see a shortage or massive inflation, if you dig deep enough, you are going to find some sort of bailout, some sort of government subsidy, some sort of regulations preventing free individual actors from choosing how to direct the resources in that area as they would choose without that intervention. And the infrastructure bill is no exception. And if right now you're thinking about throwing out that dumb old platitude that if the government didn't build bridges and roads, then where would we get them from? Just read The Privatization of Roads and Highways by Walter Block. It will destroy your world. The fact of the matter is that the government decides to redirect resources into these areas specifically because free individual actors have not done so. And so by force and coercion, they direct the resources into these areas because they think that they know better than everybody else how to direct their own resources for themselves. Now, if you're still with me and you're thinking, hey, there were a lot of books recommended in this video, I'd like to put them on a wish list. I've got them all linked in the description below. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.